Hello there, and welcome to Andre's Artist Profiles. Today I'm going to be profiling an artist who is going to be turning 59 years old today. He's almost 60. And in addition to a lot of the other artist profiles I've done, celebrating talents from the 1980s, I'm going to be presenting to you my collection of music by Mr. Howard Jones here. Now, in 1985, Howard Jones was involved in a special synthesizer medley with Herbie Hancock, Stevie Wonder, and Thomas Dolby. You know, it was biracial, and it was a wonderful medley of their songs at the time played on synthesizers. Now, if you go to that video on YouTube, it's called 1985 Synthesizer Medley. You'll probably see a couple of them. You'll notice in the comments a lot of haters just continually going off about how bad the 80s is, and musically. And a lot of people out there who don't like 80s music, I have a feeling that that kind of hater mentality has affected them. And I've gone on and on about this, but I think Howard Jones probably felt a lot of that to a great degree. But Howard Jones, you know, among the synth pop crowd that he was involved with, the fact of the matter was his lyrics were much more thoughtful and had a lot more depth than even the thoughtful depth that a lot of the synth poppers had. That was a common theme among Thomas Dolby and even Duran Duran. You know, they tended to be very poetic. But Howard Jones tended to go the extra mile and often was extremely philosophical. Now, his first album, I love the cover, is very abstract and almost dark. It's called Human Lib. He broke right out with a very Caribbean soul-inflected song called New Song, which a lot of you are familiar with as a big radio hit. And of course, What Is Love was a huge breakout, and that's what he did on the synthesizer medley. There's the CD of that album. There's Howard Jones right there. This album came out in 1984, although it was made in 1983 initially. There's a lot of world music influences on this album, too, which was starting to come out a lot at the time with this sort of music. By his next album in 1985, Dream into Action, Howard Jones had formed a rhythm/horn/vocal section called Aphrodisiac, who included the background singer, Miss Karen Wheeler, who is famous as one of the singers in the British jazz, soul, hip-hop group Soul to Soul in the late 80s. And, of course, there's the front of that album. There's the middle. There's Howard again. Got a double image. Things Can Only Get Better was a huge horn-filled kind of funky number. And he had a huge ballad on here called No One Is to Blame. This is a very soulful and funky album, actually. One of Howard's best, to be totally honest with you. The next album, again recorded with Aphrodisiac. This one was produced with Phil Collins, and it's called 1 to 1. And this album came out in 1986. By this point, you know, Howard Jones' success was just starting to dip down a little bit. This album was still very successful, but no, I don't know if it was quite the level of the previous album. But it still did pretty well. He was still at a peak when he did this album, somewhat of a similar sound. Maybe just a little bit more poppy. In 1989, he released his next album, Cross That Line. This album finds him going toward a much more cooler pop electronic sound, and kind of ended his commercially successful period. And his lyrics got extremely philosophical by this point, I should add. And that carried over prominently to the next album in 1992 called In the Running. This album sounds more like a Bruce Hornsby album. You know, it's a kind of a jazzy soul record, very expert, very live-oriented, but Howard Jones' classic sound got lost a little bit on that album, if you like it that much. And I do. But Howard Jones is not an artist who was afraid to adapt to new styles. In 1992, as you know, kind of forced you to adapt. But anyway, he recorded sporadically after this, but what I have here, these 5 albums represent the strong bulk of his catalog. So that's what I have for Howard Jones, and happy birthday to him. I hope to hear some new music from him before he passes away in the future. And to all of you out there watching these YouTube artist profiles, I'll see you next time.